or what Catholics might call repentance, or what Muslims would call remembrance. But what you're doing is you're helping people turn their hearts back to each other, and each of these things, remembrance, repentance, whatever you want to call it, return, is about turning back to the truth of who we are. It's about turning back to who we are when we're not in our egoic self, but when we're in our deeply connected
I can see
self.
that. So if you're doing that with a couple and getting them sort of to do some of those things, it's sort of ratcheting it down a little bit.
Yeah, and I think it's fair to say that there's a spiritual component, although I don't know that everybody necessarily sees it that way. We certainly don't talk about religion when people come and meet with me. I mean, there have been one or two cases where people actually wanted to because that was there. I mean, I'll work with whatever people bring. So,
well, that's the only thing I always laugh because one of the jokes on mediation is it's spelled wrong. You'll get in the yellow pages under meditation instead of mediation, and so
right.
you'll do that one. Before I forget, let me go and to the other screen so that we can show a little more information on that. And before we were talking about the show, Roy, you were saying some other things about a course you were teaching. I'm not sure that's before or after we're taping it. Did you want to say anything a little bit about the?
Yes.
This is where you can get Roy if you need more information about him. His website, his telephone number, and that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be teaching a class called Divorce with Love. And actually, by the time this airs, it'll be ongoing. It's every Tuesday night at 7 o'clock p.m. The address is 1427 East Broadway. If people have questions, they're welcome to call me. You put my number on the screen.
We'll do it again, and you make sure you have your pencils out next time, or go to our website or Roy's website, and you can get more information on it, or always call us.
And my intention really is not. I mean, this is not about marketing divorce. I mean, you're welcome to come teach it with me. Anyone in the community who does this is welcome to come share it. What I want to do is, I mean, what we're about, those of us who do this, is we're trying to change the culture around divorce. We're trying to change the way divorce is thought of and done. And I mean, you talked about spirituality. As I've gone deeper on a spiritual path, I've come to see what I'm doing as bringing, to just simply conceptualize it differently than I used to see it as turning people's hearts back to each other, as bringing them back into the love. And so this course is simply it's going to be free. It's open to anyone. It's not to talk about the specifics of their cases. If they want to do that, then they need to meet with an attorney or a mediator, you or me or somebody else. But it's to talk about the process and to talk about how to walk the walk of divorce without hurting each other.
And people just don't think that's possible. And certainly, I think we've actually said. I mean, clients will say that to me. I'm sure you said to you also. Can you do this? And we've done it.
Right.
And the next question I was going to ask is, does it really work? But I guess I sort of answered the question myself. Is it your experience is that it has worked in the case you've seen?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, people can come in, as being in a place where they can hardly even look at each other, hardly speak to each other, and by the end of that, not necessarily that one session, but by the end of the process, they can be in a place of tremendous gratitude, of love,
Actually, I've often told clients, and as even before Barack Obama was just saying about it, this sort of hope. I mean, there was essentially, these people come in, and I think they're devastated, and that you're going to kind of tell them if you work on it, come up better than you went into it.
Absolutely.
Who's more likely to do this, do you think?
Well, I mean, I think anyone who's educated about it, anyone who's open to the possibility. There are an awful lot of people who don't think it's a possibility, as you just pointed to, as you just alluded to. And I mean, the reality is that as long as you've got two spouses who are willing and able to act in good faith, and again, by that I mean simply be authentic, be truthful about where they're at and what they're feeling, then it can work.
It's good. It is. What about if you're not feeling love? I mean, a lot of people aren't feeling love when they're going through divorce. They're feeling lots of other things, usually anger, or sadness, or something else. What do you do then?
Well, I mean, I think that's great. I mean, what I want to do is I want to get people in touch with what they're feeling, not simply be reactive, because people be, let's say, angry in a way that's, where you're just yelling and getting it all over people, but to really tune into that. What's going on? What am I angry about? Maybe what other feelings might be underneath that. A lot of times people are feeling scared or hurt, and the anger covers over that. And then what is the need underneath those feelings? Because once you get to the need, it really opens things up. And then, like for instance, the example we used earlier, somebody who says, I need to have $3,000 a year forever, and maybe they're real angry about it. Maybe they're real belligerent. But as they dig down to the truth of what that's really about, I'm scared. I'm not going to be able to take care of myself, for instance. That opens a lot of possibilities, because now there isn't simply one way to get your needs met, that particular need met of I need to take care of myself. There are an infinite number of ways. $3,000 a month forever is maybe one way, but so people will come in with their opposing positions, but as we dig down to those deeper needs, and as they really get to stand in each other's shoes and see what it's like for the other person sitting across from them, whatever water is under the bridge, all the terrible things people do to each other in marriage, by the time they get to us, there's a lot of feeling, as you said. But whatever's happened, when they can really understand each other and stand in each other's shoes, things change. And then suddenly they're able to look at it differently and see the multiplicities, the possibilities. And
what happens, though, if one person wants to do this and one person doesn't want to do this? What do you do?
Well, as I said, as long as they're willing to act in good faith. If they're not, then it may not be appropriate. I mean, what I'll often do is, somebody will call me up and say, is this appropriate for my spouse and I? And I'll talk to them a little bit, and if I'm not hearing anything that really concerns me, such as, domestic violence, or, some reason why, it's obvious that one party isn't acting in good faith, then what I'll do is I'll suggest that they talk to their spouse, that maybe they show them my website, show them the video that's on the website, have the spouse call me. And, if I've spent 5 or 10 minutes on the phone with one person, I kind of like to spend 5 or 10 minutes with the other one also, so they don't come in feeling like, like there's an imbalance, like one of them already knows me and the other one doesn't.
Good. That's a good way, good reminder to have it put us on the screen and put your website back on and information about Roy. If you want to do it, it's on the screen again. Get your pencils out. We'll try to show it one more time in doing that one. But if you want to get in touch with Roy, this is where you can reach him. You sort of interestingly started thinking about this, and I was thinking if the people doing this, but do you find that people then stay married at that point when they come in and they decide not to get divorced? Or I guess, and the other sort of next question on that one is, if they're doing this, why get divorced in the first place? Well,
you touched on earlier hope. A lot of times by the time people come to me, they've lost hope. They think, typically one spouse would kind of like to work it out and the other one feels like they're done. And very often the reason they feel like they're done is because they don't think there's any possibility that things could really work for them. They're not necessarily thinking of it in those terms, but as they dig deep, they may come to that realization, or they may discover that, no, it's too late. Even though I now understand my spouse, even though he or she now understands me, even though there's more intimacy and love than there was before, maybe a lot more, the wall is just too thick, and I don't want to go back.
Have you had people, though, that come to you to get divorced and then
absolutely. I'm sure you have too. I mean, miracles happen. As you and I know, this kind of work, amazing things can happen. And it's always very beautiful when that happens. And sometimes, they'll open these up to a point where they decide to go to couples counseling, and I'll refer them to somebody really good. Or sometimes they'll stay with me and want to do marital mediation. And I know you and your wife do that as well. It just varies.
You're a great person to interview, Roy, because you always lead me to the next question, which is what other professionals are people use in divorcing with love?
Right.
Divorce with love.
Well, certainly if if a couple is working with a marital counselor, that's great. I mean, that just helps us move it, stay in the love or move into the love. That's a good example. All the professionals who are used in a collaborative context can be used in a mediation context or even a sitting down across the kitchen table context. So you can bring in a therapist to be the child specialist who really looks at, what does the world look like through the child's eyes or the children's eyes? Because very often, children tell parents what they think they want to hear. And we don't really know what's happening for the child. It can really change things. And I'll remind me to tell a little anecdote about that.
Go ahead.
Right now? Okay.
I like anecdotes.
A case some years ago, it was a collaborative case, and it seemed like they had one 12-year-old son, and it seemed like this child was doing just fine. Both parents thought he was doing fine. But we decided, just to be on the safe side, let's get a child specialist. And so, we found somebody who worked well with teen boys, and they met for a while. And the kid was actually excited when it was explained to him as not something you have to do, but an opportunity to have a seat at the table, an opportunity to have input into the process in a way that would be emotionally safe, that wouldn't require him to choose sides. And what came out of it, when the therapist came and met with us at one of our meetings, so the 5 of us were sitting there, and the therapist explained that this child was, loved both parents, was a really good kid, very creative, wonderful, many wonderful qualities, but he was kind of relating to his father like a superhero. His father was very, very successful, extremely successful, and gone a lot. And so he adored his father, but it was kind of like the way you'd relate to Superman.